Hey guys, Redneck Mini 14 here, and I've seen quite a few videos out there from different channels, basically saying, if I could only have a certain number of guns, which guns would I choose to be those specific guns? Now I've seen this with, like 3 guns, 4 guns, 5 guns. People do different numbers, but I'm going to do a video like that, and I'm going to go with 5 guns, and so if I could only have 5 guns, which 5 guns would I choose? Now keep in mind with this list, this is based off of guns that I currently own and actually have experience with, which really isn't a lot of guns. So over the years the list may change a little bit, but I'm not sure that it would change a whole lot because I do really like the guns that I have chosen. So if you ever follow Never Enough Ammo, he always goes, like when talking about 3 guns and 5 guns, he always says you should stick to 5 main categories, which is you need to have a good .22, a defensive handgun, a defensive rifle, a hunting rifle, and a shotgun, whether it's defensive or for hunting or both. So that's kind of the philosophy that I tend to go with when talking about only having a certain number of firearms. And so that's what I have laid out here on the table. Now all these guns have been safety checked prior to the video, so don't worry about that. So let's start with the .22. For a .22, and I would say go with the .22 rifle personally, instead of a handgun, because you have a longer barrel, longer range, etc. But for my .22, I would go with the Marlin 795. And I know a lot of people say that you should go with the 10/22 because of the aftermarket. And the Marlin 795 doesn't really have a huge aftermarket, very little actually. But I like the 795 because it's, number one, it's about $50 to $100 cheaper depending on where you get it. It's more accurate than the 10/22 with a standard barrel. It's lightweight. It's very lightweight. It's like 4.5 pounds. Very lightweight. So it's very easy to carry around, and it has a few features that I would consider superior to the 10/22, mainly the last shot hold open, which isn't a big deal, but it is a nice feature to have. And it also has cheaper magazines than the 10/22. 10/22's magazines are like 20-something dollars, and of course you go with the BX25s and up, that's like $30, $40 depending on where you get them and which specific magazine you're going with. And of course there are aftermarkets with that as well that are cheaper, but they're not as reliable. With this you can get the Pro Mag 25 round magazines, and those are very reliable, and they're also like half the cost of a 10/22 mag, so win-win. But I would go with the 795. It's very accurate, very lightweight, very compact, and it's probably my favorite .22 for practical purposes, so this is what I'd go with. Okay, and for the shotgun, I'm going to have to go with the Mossberg 500. I go with the Mossberg 500. I have 2 Mossberg 500s. I also have a Maverick 88 with a 7-round magazine tube, but I'll go with the 500 because I have an extra barrel that I can use to hunt birds with, and so that's just another good option to have. I tend to keep the 18.5-inch barrel on it when it's in the safe, just so it's more compact. But I'll go with I like the Mossberg 500 over the Remington 870 and other shotguns because I just think that some of the ergonomics are more superior to those other shotguns, and I have a lot of experience with the Mossbergs, and I'm a lot more used to them. So for a good defensive shotgun or a hunting shotgun, I go with the Mossberg 500. Let's talk about handgun. For the handgun, I have the Ruger P89. It's a very inexpensive pistol to come by. I got this one for $256, plus all the other fees that go along with that. Has fairly common magazines, not quite as common as like a Glock or a Beretta, but they are fairly common. At least the 9mm ones are. This is a Metgar, and it's 17 rounds, although I can only fit 16 rounds in it. But 16 rounds at 9mm is pretty good. And of course, the magazines, you can also get them from ProMag and I think a couple other magazine manufacturers. At least the 9mm. I'm not sure about the 40s or the 45s, but you can get the 9mm in a few different manufacturers. It's got a 4.5-inch barrel, so a nice long barrel, very reliable. If you would have asked me like a month or so ago, I would have probably picked my Smith & Wesson 5904 because I have more experience with that, and it was a very reliable pistol. But then I experienced some feeding issues with hollow point ammunition, and so far this seems to be a more reliable pistol, at least as far as this specific pistol versus that specific pistol, if that makes sense. But Ruger P89, very reliable handgun, very inexpensive, fairly common magazines, and I go with 9mm because it's the cheapest handgun ammunition out there, and you typically get more capacity than 40 or 45. Okay, and for a defensive rifle, I'm going to go with, surprise, surprise, the Mini 14. And I know what you're thinking, Redneck, you just built that AR-15, why wouldn't you go with that for availability of parts and magazines and accessories, etc., etc. I like the Mini 14, and I'm more comfortable with this style of a rifle. It's just more natural to me, and I have a little bit more experience with the Mini 14. And quite honestly, that AR-15 that I built it to be something that's kind of flashy and something that not a lot of people have. It's not finished yet. It's going to have some wood furniture on it eventually, so that it can be kind of a classy, flashy looking AR-15 that you take out to the range every once in a while to just look pretty. That sounds kind of weird, but that's really what I built it for. Just to have fun with and not be like a tactical rifle. But it's a good rifle, and I like it. But I like the Mini 14 more, and I have more magazines with the Mini 14, in my inventory right now. So I'm gonna go with the Mini 14. Just my favorite rifle. It's just my bias. And last but not least, for a hunting rifle, I'm gonna go with the Marlin 336. This was the very first rifle that I ever bought, and it has served me well over the years. I go with the Marlin 336 over, say, my MVP because, number one, I have more experience with it. I'm more comfortable shooting this. The scope is actually sighted in. I haven't sighted in my MVP yet. Shh, don't tell anyone. But I do have more experience with this, and I'm pretty accurate with it out to 100 yards. I could probably stretch that to 150, maybe even 200 yards, depending on which ammunition I'm using. And of course, currently this has a scope on it, obviously, but I was planning on taking the scope off in the future. But if I could only have 5 guns, I'd probably keep the scope on it. So, although I probably have a little bit different setup so that I could use the iron sights and the scope, depending on the range. But, I go with the 30-30 because it's very common ammunition, it's very powerful. The lever action, it's my favorite action. It's very, well, it's probably not as reliable as something like a bolt action, but it's still a very reliable system, and it's a pretty bulletproof system. The lever actions have been around for a long time, and like I said, it's a fairly accurate rifle. It's a very powerful rifle. The 30-30 ammunition it's about as common as, say, 30-06, 308, but it's typically a little bit cheaper, at least as far as hunting rounds go. Sometimes you can find some 308 for a very reasonable price. I did find some for like $7 on clearance, but that's kind of a rare thing. 30-30, typical prices, the 30-30 ammunition is going to be a little bit cheaper than 308 or 30-06. Again, that's for hunting ammunition. So anyway, those are the 5 guns that I would go with. I have lots of experience with all 5 of them, and they all seem to be very reliable guns, very accurate guns, and I love them. So let me know what your 5 guns are in the comments below, or maybe you can even do a video on it, and I can watch your video or whatever. But those are my 5 guns. Let me know what your 5 guns are. Subscribe to my channel, like me on Facebook. I'm RedneckMini14, and until next time, be safe.